The crisp autumn air bit at the glass towers overlooking Silicon Valley, a testament to the relentless, cutting-edge world humming within their polished walls. Here, ambition was currency, innovation a religion, and competition a sport played with dizzying stakes. Every fiber of these colossal tech empires thrummed with the energy of brilliant minds vying for the next big breakthrough, the next coveted position. Job interviews at companies like Innovatech weren't just conversations, they were gladiatorial contests, demanding not only unparalleled technical prowess, but also an air of effortless sophistication, a polished veneer hinting at untold potential. Candidates arrived in sleek, self-driving cars, their tailored suits a uniform of success, their resumes bulging with Ivy League credentials and impressive internships. This was a world that, for most, felt impossibly distant, a shimmering mirage of opportunity visible only from afar. Yet, hundreds of miles away, nestled in the forgotten corners of a small, struggling town, a young woman named Elena lived a life far removed from this glittering reality. In her mid-20s, with eyes that held the ghosts of too many sleepless nights, Elena was a mother, a survivor, and a warrior in her own quiet battle against poverty and the crushing weight of circumstance. Her small, dilapidated apartment, barely a haven, often felt colder than the streets outside, especially in the harsh grip of winter. Every single day was a calculated exercise in survival, a meticulous balancing act involving meager funds, dwindling food supplies, and the constant gnawing worry for her daughter, Lily. Lily, a bright-eyed toddler with a laugh like wind chimes, was the sun around which Elena's entire universe revolved. Her unexpected arrival had derailed Elena's promising academic career, forcing her to drop out of community college just as her talent for coding was beginning to blossom. The financial hardship that followed was immediate and brutal, a relentless tide that swept away any hope of returning to her studies. But motherhood, though a crucible, had also forged in Elena an unbreakable resolve. She might have lost her path, but she refused to let Lily lose hers. Every sacrifice, every ounce of her dwindling energy was poured into creating a better future for her child. She scoured free online courses, devoured programming books from the public library, and coded late into the night, her fingers flying across the cracked keyboard of a borrowed laptop, fueled by lukewarm coffee and an unwavering dream. Then, a miracle happened, or at least it felt like one. Elena had poured her heart and soul and every spare moment she had into an open-source coding project, a complex algorithm designed to optimize resource allocation for non-profits. It was a project born from her own experiences, a digital cry for efficiency in a world riddled with waste. She had uploaded it to a niche online forum, expecting nothing more than a few curious glances. Instead, it had gone viral within the developer community, catching the attention of none other than Mr. Thompson, the visionary CEO of Innovatech, the very titan of Silicon Valley. An email, almost surreal in its arrival, landed in her inbox. It was a personal invitation for an interview, not just any interview, but a direct meeting with Mr. Thompson himself, for a senior developer position. Elena stared at the words, her heart hammering against her ribs, a mixture of disbelief and surging hope washing over her. This was it, the chance she had desperately prayed for, the golden ticket to pull herself and Lily out of the abyss. But the sheer logistics of attending such an interview were a nightmare, a cruel joke played by fate. Childcare was an unaffordable luxury she hadn't experienced in years. The cost of a bus ticket to the sprawling city that housed Innovatech felt like a king's ransom. And then there were the clothes. Her wardrobe consisted of hand-me-downs and faded, worn-out garments, none of which were remotely suitable for a prestigious corporate environment. The most painful realization, though, was about her feet. Her only pair of shoes, thin-soled and practically disintegrating, wouldn't survive the long journey, let alone convey an ounce of professionalism. The thought of arriving barefoot, carrying her baby, instantly filled her with a profound sense of humiliation and despair. How could she possibly bridge the chasm between her desolate reality and the gleaming promise of Innovatech? This interview, her one shot at salvation, suddenly felt like an impossible summit to climb. Before we dive deeper into Elena's extraordinary journey, Make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our community for more inspiring, true stories. Elena awoke with a start, the harsh morning light filtering through the grimy window of the shelter doing little to soften the anxiety coiling in her stomach. The interview invitation, printed on a thick, glossy cardstock she'd scavenged, lay clutched in her hand, a stark reminder of the monumental task ahead. Mr. Thompson, CEO of one of the world's leading tech companies, expected her in Silicon Valley in 3 days. 3 days to bridge the chasm between her desolate reality and a world of gleaming skyscrapers and limitless opportunity. Her mind raced, a frantic kaleidoscope of logistics and despair. How could she possibly get there? The bus ticket alone was an impossible sum. A week's worth of meager earnings from odd jobs that barely covered Lily's formula, and a corner in this overcrowded refuge. She tried to contact distant relatives, people she hadn't spoken to in years, their numbers scrawled on a crumpled piece of paper. Each call was met with hesitant apologies, whispered stories of their own struggles, or simply unanswered rings. The cold reality washed over her. There was no safety net, no family fortune to tap into, no benevolent aunt or uncle to provide a loan. The ache in her chest intensified, a familiar companion that reminded her of every setback, every closed door. She looked down at Lily, peacefully sleeping beside her, a tiny hand curled around Elena's finger. Lily's innocent face was Elena's unwavering motivation, the reason she dared to dream of a life beyond this suffocating existence. But the dream felt impossibly far, shrouded in the fog of her current circumstances. The societal judgment she anticipated was almost as daunting as the physical journey itself. She could already hear the whispers, see the disdainful glances. A young, single mother, unkempt, probably barefoot, carrying a baby into a corporate temple of innovation. The thought alone made her flush with shame, a feeling she fought tooth and nail to suppress. She knew her worth wasn't defined by her appearance or her poverty, but the world often judged by first impressions, especially in the cold, unyielding environment of corporate America. The interview wasn't just about proving her coding prowess, it was about overcoming a lifetime of disadvantage, battling preconceived notions, and an internal fear that whispered she wasn't good enough, that she didn't belong. The distance to the city was vast, a 2-hour drive on a good day, but for someone relying on public transport, it stretched into an odyssey. The sheer cost of getting there, even for a single bus fare, seemed insurmountable. Her last few dollars, carefully hoarded, amounted to a pitiful sum, nowhere near enough for the multi-leg bus journey required. Childcare was an absolute impossibility. Even if she found someone willing to watch Lily, she had no money to pay them. The choice was stark: either bring Lily or miss the only chance she might ever have to escape this cycle of poverty. The choice, for Elena, was no choice at all. Lily came first, always. A desperate plan began to form in her mind, born of necessity and sheer willpower. She would walk as far as she could, then perhaps try to hitchhike, a dangerous gambit but one she felt compelled to consider. The remaining money would be meticulously saved for the absolute final leg of the bus journey, the stretch that would take her directly to the gleaming towers of Silicon Valley. She began to prepare with a grim determination. She carefully bundled Lily in her warmest, albeit tattered blanket, making sure her head was protected from the autumn chill. A small bottle of milk, precious and carefully measured, was tucked into the makeshift sling she fashioned from an old scarf, ensuring Lily would have sustenance on their arduous journey. Then came the agonizing decision about her feet. Her only pair of shoes, worn thin and full of holes, were a painful mockery of footwear. The soles were practically non-existent, and the upper material chafed her skin raw with every step. She had tried to patch them countless times with tape, but they were beyond repair. The thought of walking for hours, potentially days, in those shoes filled her with dread. They would surely break apart, leaving her even more vulnerable, and the blisters would be unbearable. With a heavy sigh, she made the difficult, humiliating choice. She would go barefoot. It was unthinkable, a public display of her destitution, but it was the only way to ensure she could keep moving. Her toughened feet, accustomed to the rough floors of the shelter and the uneven pavements outside, were her only reliable transport. As dawn broke fully, casting long shadows across the empty streets, Elena hoisted Lily onto her back, the small weight a comforting presence against her own weary body. She took a deep breath, the cold air filling her lungs, and stepped out of the shelter, one bare foot following the other, onto the cold, unforgiving pavement. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and fierce resolve. This journey wasn't just about an interview, it was a desperate pilgrimage, a mother's fight for her child's future, one excruciating, barefoot step at a time. The distant hum of the city, a siren song of promise and peril, beckoned her forward. The first few miles had been deceptively easy, a false promise whispered by the morning sun. Elena, carrying Lily wrapped snugly against her chest, had felt a flicker of hope, a fragile shield against the enormity of her task. But as the day wore on, the sun climbed higher, relentless and unforgiving. The asphalt shimmered, radiating heat that seeped through the soles of her worn, bare feet, each step a small, burning penance. Her initial resolve began to fray around the edges, replaced by a deep, gnawing fatigue that settled into her bones. The urban sprawl slowly gave way to a more rural stretch, then back to the fringes of another, slightly larger town, each transition marked by its own set of challenges. She conserved her precious water, rationing sips not just for herself, but for Lily, who occasionally stirred, her small, innocent face still peaceful in sleep, oblivious to the monumental effort her mother was making. Then, without warning, the sky turned a bruised, angry purple. A chill wind, sharp and biting, swept through the flat landscape, rustling the sparse, dry leaves on the roadside trees. Elena's heart sank. She had checked the weather, but the forecast had been for clear skies. Her meager preparations did not account for this. Within minutes, fat drops of rain began to fall, quickly escalating into a torrential downpour that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. The world blurred into a watery chaos. Her thin, threadbare clothes offered no protection, instantly becoming heavy and clinging. Lily stirred, a whimper escaping her lips as the cold seeped through the blanket. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through Elena's exhaustion. This was more than just discomfort. This was a threat to Lily's fragile health. She desperately scanned the roadside, seeking any form of shelter, a shed, an overhang, anything to escape the relentless assault of the rain. Her eyes burned from the effort, her muscles screaming in protest with every hurried step. Finally, in the distance, a dilapidated bus stop appeared, a small, rusted metal frame with a cracked plastic roof. It was far from ideal, offering only partial protection from the sheeting rain and whipping wind, but it was something. With a renewed burst of adrenaline, Elena half ran, half stumbled towards it, her bare feet splashing through growing puddles, the cold mud squelching between her toes. Reaching the bus stop, she huddled in the least exposed corner, trying to position herself and Lily away from the worst of the spray. Lily was now crying, a soft, pathetic sound that tore at Elena's heart. Her small body felt cold to the touch, and a faint shiver ran through her. Elena pulled the damp blanket tighter, murmuring soothing words, her voice hoarse with effort and fear. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. It's okay. We'll be warm soon." But she knew it wasn't okay. Lily's breathing sounded a little raspy, and her tiny nose was running. The thought of her precious daughter falling ill, so far from any help, ignited a fierce terror within her that dwarfed even her physical agony. The interview, the career, all of it seemed utterly insignificant compared to Lily's well-being. Should she turn back? Was this a fool's errand, risking everything, risking Lily's health, for a dream that felt impossibly distant? The internal conflict raged, a brutal war between a mother's instinct to protect and a mother's desperate hope for a better future. Her teeth chattered, her own body shivering uncontrollably, but her focus remained solely on Lily. She peeled off her only dry layer, a thin undershirt, and despite its dampness, wrapped it around Lily's head, trying to provide some semblance of warmth. Her gaze fell upon a discarded newspaper, miraculously still somewhat intact, nestled under the bench. A spark of ingenuity, born of desperation, ignited. Carefully, she unfolded it, then, with trembling hands, molded it into a makeshift cone, holding it over Lily's head like a crude, temporary umbrella, trying to deflect the drops that still found their way through the bus stop's inadequate roof. It was hardly effective, but it was an attempt, a gesture of defiance against the elements. As the rain continued its relentless assault, Elena leaned back against the cold, grimy wall of the bus stop, pulling Lily even closer. The smell of wet earth and damp concrete filled the small space. She closed her eyes for a moment, picturing the warm, dry room, the promise of a meal, the simple comfort of a roof over their heads. This picture, vivid and tantalizing, was the fuel that kept her going. She began to hum, a soft, wavering melody that transitioned into a lullaby she had sung to Lily since she was an infant. Her voice was rough, cracking with emotion and fatigue, but the familiar tune worked its magic. Lily, still sniffling, began to quiet, her tiny hand reaching out to grasp one of Elena's fingers. A small anchor in the storm, Elena sang verse after verse, her voice a fragile protest against the despair that threatened to engulf them, a defiant beacon of hope in the heart of the tempest. Each note was a promise, a prayer, a desperate plea for strength, not just for herself, but for the precious, vulnerable life cradled in her arms. The rain eventually lessened, a slow, grudging retreat, but the wind continued to howl and the cold had seeped deep into their very being. The arduous journey was far from over. The persistent chill clung to Elena's bones, a constant reminder of the long night spent exposed to the elements. As the first pale streaks of dawn painted the sky, she pushed herself up from the cold bus stop bench, Lily still nestled against her chest, now thankfully sleeping soundly. The rain had stopped, leaving behind glistening streets and a world that felt scrubbed clean, yet somehow still hostile. Each step Elena took sent a jolt of pain through her bare feet, the rough asphalt a cruel torment to her tender soles. The city was slowly awakening around them, its inhabitants stirring, beginning their daily commute. Elena felt every eye on her, every glance a burning arrow to her already fractured confidence. People in sleek cars, their faces impassive behind tinted windows, seemed to glide past, oblivious to her struggle. Pedestrians, bundled in warm coats and sensible shoes, hurried along, their expressions ranging from mild curiosity to outright disdain. She heard snippets of conversation, hushed whispers that felt directed at her, though she couldn't make out the words. The humiliation was a heavy cloak, suffocating and inescapable. Her hair, still damp from the rain, was a tangled mess. Her clothes, once merely worn, now looked stained and disheveled. And then there were her feet, raw and red, a stark declaration of her poverty for all to see. The feeling of inadequacy intensified with every block as they ventured deeper into the city. The buildings grew taller, sleeker, made of gleaming glass and polished steel. The air grew crisper, cleaner, but also felt more judgmental. This was the tech district, the promised land of innovation and wealth, a stark, almost cruel contrast to her own tattered existence. She saw people sipping expensive lattes, their laptops open, their conversations filled with jargon she barely understood. They exuded an aura of effortless success, a world away from her desperate fight for survival. She clutched Lily tighter, her fear growing with each imposing structure they passed. What right did she have to be here? How could she, looking like this, hope to convince anyone of her capabilities? The brilliant coding project that had captured Mr. Thompson's attention felt like a distant dream, an anomaly in her otherwise bleak reality. She imagined walking into that pristine lobby, the polished floors reflecting her ragged appearance, the receptionist's eyes widening in shock, then narrowing in judgment. Her technical prowess, her ingenious algorithms, her passion for problem solving. Would any of it matter once they saw her? Would they even let her pass the front desk? The fear was almost paralyzing, threatening to overwhelm the fragile hope that had sustained her through the grueling journey. She stopped for a moment, leaning against a cold, marble-clad planter. Lily stirred, letting out a soft whimper. Elena looked down at her daughter's innocent face, so trusting, so dependent. It was Lily who reminded her why she was here. It wasn't for herself, not entirely. It was for Lily's future, for a chance to break the cycle, to provide a life free from cold bus stops and empty stomachs. This thought, like a small burning ember, rekindled her resolve. She took several deep, shuddering breaths, trying to quiet the frantic beating of her heart. She closed her eyes for a moment, not to rest, but to mentally prepare herself. This was it, the culmination of weeks of desperate planning, days of arduous travel, and a lifetime of struggle. She had to push through the humiliation, ignore the stares, and focus. She began to mentally rehearse her interview responses, trying to recall every detail of her project, every line of code, every design choice. She imagined herself articulating her ideas clearly, confidently, letting her intellect shine through the grime and weariness. She smoothed Lily's blanket, trying to make the tattered fabric appear neat, adjusting the small, rudimentary cloth diaper she had fashioned from an old shirt. She gently brushed a stray curl from Lily's forehead, her touch infinitely tender. Lily needed to look presentable too, even if Elena herself was a mess. She wanted Lily to appear cared for, loved, despite their circumstances. Every small act of care was a defiance against the harshness of their reality, a declaration that they were worthy. She searched for a public restroom, hoping to at least splash some water on her face, but found none readily accessible without attracting more unwanted attention. Time was ticking, and she couldn't risk being late. With a final desperate surge of determination, Elena pushed off the planter. Her feet screamed in protest, but she ignored them. She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and started walking again, directly towards the colossal, shimmering glass tower that housed Mr. Thompson's company. Each step was a battle, each glance from passers-by a painful blow, but she kept her gaze fixed on the entrance, a beacon of her last hope. She was no longer just Elena. She was a mother, a survivor, a brilliant mind, and she was going to demand her chance, no matter how she looked or how much it hurt. Her bare feet were not a sign of defeat, but a testament to the incredible distance she had traveled, the immense obstacles she had overcome just to stand on the threshold of this opportunity. The first rays of dawn pierced through the lingering gloom, painting the city skyline in hues of bruised purple and pale orange as Elena finally stumbled into the sprawling metropolis. Her legs ached with a deep, persistent throb, each step a testament to her unwavering resolve. Lily, thankfully, had drifted into a fitful slumber, her small body curled tightly against Elena's chest, protected from the biting morning chill. The rain had ceased hours ago, leaving behind glistening streets and a pervasive dampness that clung to everything. Elena's bare feet, now calloused and bruised, slapped rhythmically against the cold pavement, a stark, humble drumbeat in the symphony of the awakening city. As she navigated the labyrinthine streets, the architecture grew increasingly imposing, the buildings soaring skyward like metallic trees in a concrete jungle. She had arrived in the tech district, a world away from the familiar, struggling landscape she had left behind. Sleek, glass-fronted buildings mirrored the rising sun, reflecting an image of prosperity and innovation that felt alien and intimidating. Immaculately dressed professionals, their faces serious and purposeful, strode past her, their expensive shoes clicking a confident rhythm on the sidewalks. They averted their eyes, or worse, cast brief, disdainful glances at the disheveled woman clutching a baby, her bare feet a glaring anomaly in their polished world. Each stare, each hurried turn of a head, was a fresh wound to Elena's already battered self-esteem. The humiliation was a physical weight, pressing down on her shoulders, threatening to buckle her knees. She felt like an alien, an unwanted trespasser in a world that clearly had no place for her. The stark contrast between her appearance and the opulent environment was a cruel mirror, reflecting back every inadequacy, every struggle. A wave of nausea washed over her, a potent cocktail of exhaustion, hunger, and acute self-consciousness. Her stomach growled in protest, but she ignored it, her focus solely on the towering edifice before her. This was it, the headquarters of Thompson Innovations. The building loomed, a monument to corporate power and technological prowess, its polished chrome and vast glass panels glinting under the morning sun. A deep breath, shaky and shallow, filled her lungs. She had to push through this. For Lily. She adjusted Lily's blanket one last time, trying to smooth out the wrinkles to present even a semblance of order amidst her chaos. She took another gulp of stale air, mentally rehearsing her interview responses, her voice clear and articulate in her mind, a stark contrast to the tremor she knew would betray her if she spoke aloud. She clung to the belief that her skills, her code, her sheer determination would somehow transcend the superficial judgment she anticipated. With a final, fortifying resolve, Elena pushed open the massive glass doors of Thompson Innovations. The air inside was a luxurious caress of climate-controlled warmth, instantly more comfortable than the chill outside. But the relief was fleeting, immediately replaced by a fresh wave of anxiety. The lobby was an architectural marvel, a vast, echoing space of marble, chrome, and minimalist design. A massive, glowing display screen dominated one wall, showcasing cutting-edge animations and company achievements. The air hummed with a low, sophisticated energy. At a sleek, futuristic desk sat a receptionist, impeccably groomed and radiating an aura of calm professionalism. Elena approached, each bare footstep feeling impossibly loud on the polished floor. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of dread and hope. The receptionist looked up, her perfectly arched eyebrows raising in a slow, almost imperceptible ascent. Her eyes widened, scanning Elena from her unkempt hair down to her exposed, dirty feet, lingering for a moment on the bundle in her arms. The unspoken shock was palpable, a silent judgment that pierced Elena far deeper than any muttered insult. The receptionist's perfectly made-up face tightened almost imperceptibly, a quick flicker of disdain before she managed to compose herself. "Good morning," the receptionist said, her voice cool and controlled, though a hint of wary curiosity laced her tone. "Do you have an appointment?" Elena managed a weak nod, her throat suddenly dry. "Yes, Elena Rodriguez, for an interview with Mr. Thompson." The words felt foreign, out of place in this pristine environment. The receptionist consulted her tablet, her gaze briefly flicking back to Elena's bare feet before she found the name. A small, almost imperceptible frown creased her brow. "Ah, yes, Ms. Rodriguez, we were expecting you. Please, have a seat. Mr. Thompson is currently in a meeting, but he should be free shortly." She gestured vaguely towards a cluster of exquisitely designed ergonomic chairs. Elena nodded again, her humiliation deepening with each second. She shuffled towards the chairs, acutely aware of the weight of the receptionist's gaze, and likely the gazes of others in the lobby, though she dared not meet their eyes. She settled into a chair, trying to make herself as small and inconspicuous as possible, acutely aware of her own dirty, damp clothes contrasting sharply with the pristine upholstery. Every tick of the oversized clock on the wall felt like an eternity, each moment stretching the thin fabric of her composure tighter. She could feel the judging stares, whispers, or simply the palpable discomfort radiating from the few other well-dressed individuals scattered around the lobby. Her cheeks burned with shame, yet a stubborn spark of defiance flickered within her. She was here for Lily. She would not break. Just as the agonizing weight threatened to overwhelm her, a sudden stir rippled through the far end of the lobby. A group of impeccably dressed executives emerged from a glass-walled conference room, their voices hushed but authoritative. At the forefront was a man of distinguished bearing, his silver hair neatly combed, his suit perfectly tailored. This had to be Mr. Thompson. He moved with an air of quiet power, his gaze sweeping the lobby with an almost casual intensity. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, landed on Elena. He paused, his conversation with his colleagues trailing off. His attention was immediately drawn to the unusual sight of a young woman clutching a baby, sitting barefoot in his immaculately curated lobby. His brow furrowed, not in anger or disdain, but in a mixture of surprise and profound curiosity. He took a single, decisive step away from his entourage, his eyes now fixed solely on Elena and the small bundle in her arms. Instead of dismissing her or signaling for the receptionist to intervene, he stopped. His piercing gaze narrowed slightly as he took in her weary face, her worn clothes, and then, unmistakably, her bare feet. A silence descended on that corner of the lobby, pregnant with unspoken questions. He walked towards her, his footsteps deliberate, every eye in the vicinity now following his movement. He stood before her, a towering figure of power and influence, and surprisingly, there was no trace of judgment in his eyes, only an unwavering, almost gentle inquiry. He looked down at Lily's sleeping face, then back up at Elena, a faint, unreadable expression on his face. "Excuse me," he began, his voice deep and measured, completely devoid of the expected reprimand or dismissal. "May I ask your name?" Mr. Thompson, his gaze unwavering, finally broke the silence in the vast, echoing lobby. He gestured towards a discreet, richly paneled door tucked away from the main reception area. "Please, Elena, come with me," he said, his voice softer than she had anticipated, devoid of any judgment. "Let's find somewhere more comfortable for you and your daughter." Elena, still reeling from the unexpected encounter, numbly followed him, her bare feet making surprisingly little sound on the plush carpet. Each step felt heavy, burdened by the weight of her appearance, the stark contrast between her and this opulent environment. She clutched Lily tighter, her anxiety a knot in her stomach, wondering what fresh humiliation awaited her behind that closed door. The room he led them into was not an interview office. It was a tastefully decorated personal lounge, complete with soft, leather armchairs, a low, polished wooden table, and a panoramic view of the bustling city below. A sense of calm, almost surreal, permeated the space. He motioned towards one of the armchairs. "Please, make yourselves at home." He then disappeared briefly, returning with a warm, steaming mug in one hand and a small, soft blanket in the other. He gently placed the mug on the table beside Elena, its warmth radiating outwards, a comforting contrast to the chill that still clung to her. "This is herbal tea," he explained, his eyes twinkling slightly. "Good for warming up. And this," he added, draping the blanket over Lily, who was now stirring, "is for your little one." Elena's initial reaction was a surge of gratitude, quickly followed by a renewed wave of apprehension. What was happening? This wasn't an interview, it felt more like an interrogation of a different kind. He settled into the armchair opposite her, his posture relaxed, yet his eyes remained intently fixed on her. "Elena," he began, his voice taking on a more serious tone, "I must admit, your appearance here is unusual. I saw you in the lobby, and I couldn't help but notice the circumstances. Would you mind telling me your story? Honestly, from the beginning." A wave of conflicting emotions washed over Elena. Part of her wanted to recoil, to protect her pride, to hide the raw, painful truth of her struggles. She was here to prove her worth as a coder, not as a victim of circumstance. Yet another part of her, the part that had endured countless hardships and humiliations, recognized the genuine, albeit curious, empathy in his eyes. There was no scorn, no condescension, only a profound, almost analytical interest. This was her chance, perhaps her only chance, to bridge the immense gap between where she stood and where she desperately needed to be. Taking a deep breath, Elena began to speak, her voice initially hesitant, then gaining strength as she recounted her journey. She started with her childhood, a bright, inquisitive mind trapped by the limitations of poverty. She spoke of her passion for technology, how she taught herself coding on a dilapidated, borrowed laptop, countless nights fueled by cheap coffee and an unyielding dream. She described the heartbreaking decision to drop out of college when her scholarship funds ran dry and the unexpected yet cherished arrival of Lily. Her voice wavered slightly as she confessed to their homelessness, the endless nights spent in shelters or, worse, on the streets, the constant gnawing fear for Lily's safety and well-being. She didn't exaggerate, she didn't beg for pity, she simply laid bare the unvarnished truth of her existence, each word imbued with a quiet dignity that belied her ragged appearance. Mr. Thompson listened without interruption, his gaze unwavering, occasionally nodding slowly. He didn't interrupt her narrative with questions about algorithms or data structures. Instead, his probing queries, when they came, were about her character, her resilience. "Why?" he asked gently. "Did you choose to walk so far, knowing the difficulties, knowing you had your daughter with you?" Elena met his gaze directly. "Because, Mr. Thompson," she replied, her voice firm, "this opportunity is everything. It's not just a job, it's a lifeline. It's the chance for Lily to have a stable home, an education, a future where she doesn't have to worry about where her next meal comes from. It's the chance to break a cycle that has plagued my family for generations." She then looked down at her bare, grimy feet, a faint flush creeping up her neck. "And as for my feet," she continued, a flicker of defiance in her eyes, "my only pair of shoes were past repair. They cut into my skin with every step. I made the choice to walk barefoot because it was less painful than those shoes, and I couldn't afford to buy new ones, nor could I risk being late because of blisters. Every penny I had was saved for Lily's milk and the bus fare for the final stretch." The honesty was raw, almost painful, but it was delivered with an unyielding determination. She wasn't asking for sympathy, she was stating facts, demonstrating the lengths she had gone to, the sacrifices she had made, to simply arrive for this potential interview. She explained how her passion for coding was her only escape, her only means of building a better world for Lily, one line of code at a time. This job, she emphasized, was not just about her, it was about securing her daughter's future, a future she fiercely believed Lily deserved. The room hummed with the weight of her words, a profound silence settling as Elena finished her powerful, unvarnished story. She had laid her soul bare, and now the ball was in his court. Mr. Thompson remained silent for a long moment after Elena finished speaking, his expression a complex mixture of thoughtfulness and something akin to awe. He didn't immediately respond to her raw, honest confession. Instead, he rose from his seat, his movements deliberate, and walked over to a small, elegant coffee machine in the corner of the room. He prepared a steaming cup, adding a generous amount of cream and sugar, and offered it to Elena with a gentle smile. "Please, Elena," he said, his voice soft but firm, "have this. You've been through quite an ordeal." He then turned his attention to Lily, still sleeping peacefully in Elena's arms. "And for your little one, we have some fresh, warm milk in the break room. Would she prefer a bottle or perhaps a sippy cup?" His concern felt genuine, a stark contrast to the cold, impersonal world Elena had navigated for so long. Elena, surprised by his kindness, gratefully accepted the warm drink, the heat seeping into her chilled hands, a small comfort in the grand, intimidating office. As Elena sipped the coffee, feeling a flicker of warmth spread through her, Mr. Thompson returned to his seat, leaning forward slightly. "Now, Elena," he began, his tone shifting, becoming more direct, "you mentioned a viral coding project. Tell me about it, in detail." This was the moment she had been preparing for, the chance to finally showcase the brilliance she knew she possessed, the talent that had brought her to this very room. A spark ignited in her eyes, a passion that had been overshadowed by the day's hardships. She carefully shifted Lily, making sure the baby remained undisturbed, then began to describe her project. She spoke of her innovative algorithm designed to optimize resource allocation for homeless shelters, predicting needs and matching available donations with incredible precision. She explained the complex data structures, the machine learning models she had built from scratch using open-source libraries, and the elegant, intuitive user interface that made it accessible even to those with minimal technical expertise. Elena's words flowed effortlessly, a torrent of technical jargon and creative solutions, painting a vivid picture of her ingenuity. She described how she had leveraged publicly available data, combined with her own observations from living within the system, to create a tool that could genuinely make a difference. She even recounted the story behind its unexpected virality, how a small grassroots organization had discovered it, implemented it on a trial basis, and witnessed an immediate, dramatic improvement in their ability to serve their community, leading to exponential sharing across social media and tech forums. Mr. Thompson listened, every fiber of his being focused on her explanation. His eyes, initially unreadable, now gleamed with keen interest. He peppered her with intelligent questions, delving deeper into the nuances of her code, challenging her on certain assumptions, and exploring potential scalability. Elena answered each query with confidence and clarity, her knowledge undeniable, her brilliance shining through every word. It was clear she wasn't just reciting facts. She understood the underlying principles, the intricate connections, the potential impact of her work. She was demonstrating not just technical skill, but a profound understanding of problem solving and a remarkable capacity for empathy, applying her talents to a cause close to her heart. The CEO found himself increasingly impressed, not only by her technical prowess, but by the sheer resilience and determination that had fueled her to create such sophisticated software under unimaginable circumstances. She hadn't just coded, she had innovated with purpose, driven by a personal connection to the very issues her software aimed to resolve. Suddenly, Mr. Thompson leaned back in his chair, a profound realization dawning on his face. He pressed a button on his intercom. "Sarah," he announced, his voice carrying an unusual weight, "please inform all candidates for the senior software engineer position that their interviews are being postponed indefinitely, effective immediately." Elena's heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Postponed indefinitely? Did this mean her chance was gone? A wave of despair began to wash over her, fear clutching at her throat. Had she misread his interest? Had she oversold her project? Before she could voice her confusion, Mr. Thompson turned back to her, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips. He took a deep breath, his gaze unwavering as he looked directly into her eyes. "Elena," he said, his voice firm and decisive, "I have heard enough. More than enough, in fact. What you've shown me today, both in your story and in your brilliant work, is precisely what we look for in this company. Talent, resilience, ingenuity, and a genuine drive to make a difference. These are qualities that cannot be taught, only recognized. The words hung in the air, potent and life-altering. Elena held her breath, her mind racing, daring to hope yet terrified to believe. Mr. Thompson then pushed a fresh bottle of milk across the table towards her, directly towards Lily. With a final, astonishing statement, he looked at Elena, his eyes gleaming with admiration and conviction. Elena, I'm not postponing the other interviews because I need more time. I'm stopping them entirely because I just found our new senior software engineer. Mr. Thompson absorbed every word, his face a complex tapestry of emotions that Elena couldn't decipher. He offered a warm drink, a steaming mug of herbal tea, which she gratefully accepted, her hands still trembling slightly from the emotional outpouring. He ensured Lily, now peacefully asleep in her arms, was comfortably nestled, adjusting a soft blanket that seemed to appear from nowhere. Then, his gaze softened, and he finally spoke, not of her struggles, but of her brilliance. He asked about the viral coding project, the one that had first brought her to his attention, the innovative solution to a complex data encryption problem that had quietly astounded the tech community. As Elena detailed the intricacies of her code, explaining the algorithms and demonstrating her logic with an almost poetic clarity, a shift occurred in the room. The air, heavy with the weight of her past, began to lighten, replaced by the electric hum of shared intellect and innovation. Her passion was palpable, her explanations articulate and precise, revealing a mind that thought in elegant solutions and groundbreaking designs. But Thompson, a man who had built an empire on recognizing raw talent, listened intently, his initial curiosity transforming into undeniable admiration. He questioned her with the rigor of a seasoned engineer, pushing her to elaborate, to defend her choices, and with every answer, Elena shone brighter, her fatigue momentarily forgotten in the thrill of discussing her life's work. Then, a sudden, decisive action. Mr. Thompson rose from his chair, walking to the door. He spoke briefly into an intercom, his voice firm and clear. Cancel all remaining interviews for the lead developer position, effective immediately. Elena's heart pounded against her ribs. Had she somehow failed? Was he dismissing her? Her mind raced, a whirlwind of hope and despair. He returned to his seat, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips. Elena, he began, his voice resonating with quiet authority, your resilience, your intelligence, and your sheer determination are exactly what we look for here. More than that, your story is a testament to the human spirit, a quality I value above all else. He paused, letting his words sink in, then delivered the news that would irrevocably alter the course of her life. I am offering you the lead developer position, on the spot. Your official start date will be next Monday, and that's not all. Elena's breath hitched in her throat. She gripped Lily tighter, tears blurring her vision. My assistant will arrange for immediate temporary housing for you and Lily, fully furnished, close to the office until you find something more permanent. We'll also ensure you have access to excellent childcare facilities on campus, effective immediately. And naturally, we will provide you with a stipend for basic necessities and professional attire to get you started. He concluded, his eyes twinkling. Your courage and talent, Elena, are a rare combination, and they are exactly what this company needs. We believe in investing in greatness, not just in technology, but in people. Overwhelmed, Elena could only nod, tears streaming freely down her face. She couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. The weight of years of struggle, of endless worry, of cold nights and hungry days lifted from her shoulders in an instant. She clutched Lily close, burying her face in her daughter's soft, innocent hair, a silent prayer of gratitude escaping her lips. Lily stirred, sensing her mother's emotion, and whimpered softly. Elena kissed her forehead, a future bright and promising now stretching before them. The journey, the hardship, the humiliation, all of it had led to this singular, life-altering moment. The narrative reflects on the profound power of empathy, the kind that sees beyond superficial appearances and societal judgments, recognizing the immense potential hidden beneath layers of adversity. It underscored the unyielding strength of the human spirit, Elena's journey from homelessness to a promising career, serving as a poignant reminder that true greatness is often forged in the crucible of hardship. Mr. Thompson's decision was not merely an act of charity, it was a strategic investment in talent, a recognition that character, integrity, and drive are as crucial as technical skills. Elena, once an invisible statistic, now stood on the precipice of a new life, Her bare feet no longer a symbol of her poverty, but a testament to the extraordinary lengths she would go for her child, a silent declaration of a mother's fierce, unwavering love. Her story teaches us that sometimes all it takes is one person to look beyond the obvious, to extend a hand, and to believe in the inherent capacity for triumph that resides within us all. Elena's story is a powerful reminder that true strength shines through adversity. If this story touched your heart, give us a like, share it with someone who needs inspiration, and tell us in the comments what you think about Mr. Thompson's decision. And don't forget to subscribe for more remarkable tales of human spirit.